4.2 is dropping today, but that will not stop me from throwing out my final thoughts. Now that Silverwolf has been explained in every possible fashion and my not at all subtle favoritism is satisfied, it's time to address the larger plot at hand here. That being Full Wish and her Abundance never-ending Phantom Moon Games debacle. Because I think that through some info we have gotten from Blade, Yall, Guang, and Ashvale, I think Hoyo may have spoiled their entire story. And even though there will be a giant battle as teased in the trailer, I think that it is only here that we will get to see the true villain behind this story. The Dice Head Hat Man, Asat Pramad himself. Because this whole Abundance issue is the perfect cover for a chess master type of villain who loves to play the long game. But we will get into that all in due time. Because this is the Elation's first Abundance War explained. Stream viewer polls tomorrow, lots of fun, lots of blessings, do not miss it, onto the video. Okay, so as always, I'm well aware that when I make these videos, I am oftentimes right and wrong at the same time. But that will not stop me from aiming for perfection. It is my Elation Erudition way to chase perfection that I will probably never achieve, but the chance is there, and it's fun to do so. And in my pursuit, I've come to the conclusion that a certain Abundance Emanator is using Full Wish to revive themselves. Not just because this is Yao Guang's divination and she is probably right, but because Blade also says that he feels beckoned by a different source of abundance in this world. So it would make perfect sense if this is Shuhu, mainly because too much of this Abundance Emanator is being mentioned. Blade is here and he is infected with that tree's flesh because Shuhu is a tree. Ashvale is implied to have eaten Shuhu with that thing in his arm.
That very shadow that devoured Shuhu, the emanator of abundance, hundreds of years ago.
And we have the Ambrosial Arbor in the Phantom Moon courtyard. And that is also a reference to Shuhu, but we can get into that later. First things first, Blade is of course immortal due to this edition of Imbiber Lunae incident, and he gained his immortality even as a short life species due to Shuhu's flesh. So Shuhu is very much part of his body. So if he is being beckoned by something in this world, odds are it has something to do with the abundance and Shuhu in particular, which is awkward because the Shanzhou claims to have Shuhu's remains locked in the shackling prison. But since we know that Blade exists, it's more than likely that Shuhu as a tree split into multiple branches or even leaves when they died, and the Shanzhou didn't collect all of them. I also highly doubt that Ashvale was able to consume the entirety of an Abundance Emanator. So I would guess that Shuhu is fragmented with most of them destroyed, but the pieces are trying to pull themselves back together again. And in order for this to happen, Shuhu would need two things to happen. He needs at least a few of his fragments to be in close proximity and a lot of abundance power. And unfortunately, Shuhu has what he needs right here. Two people are in possession of their fragments and the Ambrosial Arbor. And speaking of this other abundance tree, Shuhu has a special connection to it in particular. Because you see, Shuhu was very close with Yaoshi, and even traveled alongside Yaoshi on Rahu, the giant living planet that ate the Shanzhou Tangchong. Yes, Rahu, Devourer of Worlds is what this planet was called. And while riding atop this living planet, Shuhu spoke to Yaoshi about immortality and the purpose behind it, with Yaoshi's logic being that life suffering originates in the aging of the body and eventual death. So by giving people immortal bodies with the fruit from the Ambrosial Arbor, all suffering is removed and enlightenment is achieved. And if this isn't enough of a Buddhism reference, this document is called Thousand-Handed Merciful Medicus Salvation, another reference to Guan Yin, the most notorious bodhisattva in the Chinese version of Buddhism, in particular Pure Land Buddhism.
When Terminus ascends to godhood once more, they will manifest their 1,000-armed divine form and proclaim, "Now I am become finality, lifting the wheel of time, the destroyer of worlds."
So that's Terminus, Fu Li, and Yaoshi that all have heavy ties to Buddhism, with Terminus and Yaoshi in particular being described as 1,000-armed gods. But that's a topic for a whole different video. Because what this all means is that Shuhu in particular is very familiar with the Ambrosial Arbor. See the problem here? The tree Abundance Emanator is gathering their fragments on a world that has a thriving abundance tree pulsating with power. So it's no wonder that we see roots spreading around plain Arcadia and these new humanoid plant-looking enemies running around. But it doesn't end there, because now we gotta talk about Full Wish, the unwitting abundance cult leader, who I can't prove is in league with Shuhu, but the signs are there. Let me explain. You see, Full Wish is quite obviously a cult leader. She holds the opinions of the public in the palm of her hand with Full Wish TV. She runs her own school system called the Research Society of Happy Smiles, and she has a special condition that allows her to see the hopes and dreams of everyone around her, with the Mask of Elation boosting this ability even further to see the troubles in a person too. An ability that already has the capability of entrancing people into losing all rationality. And I say the mask is doing this because we see Full Wish telling people what their troubles are, and this isn't said to be her ability in her medical records. So the mask's enhancements has to have given her this buff to her already existing telepathy. We also know this due to her medical records telling us that she has an abnormal tissue growth in her synesthesia beacon implant site, and her telepathy originates from her anterior cingulate cortex, both of which are located in the frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for language production and emotional regulation. So it would make perfect sense if the synesthesia beacon implant site is precisely right there in the frontal lobe of the brain. And since the text also says this is non-pathological tissue growth, we know it's not a tumor or anything harmful to her brain. So it has to be something beneficial. So looking at the cells grown in the anterior cingulate cortex, we come across spindle cells, the cells that perform tasks related to empathy and rapid emotional processing. So we can assume that the origin of Full Wish's powers are the extra spindle cells that grew around her synesthesia beacon that buffed her ability to translate all forms of communication, thus giving her superpowered empathy that is now buffed by the Mask of Elation. I made a full video about that if you got lost. Sorry, I know it's complicated, so put as simply as possible, the abundance buffed her brain so that she can read minds, and now the mask is only making it worse. And her obsession with avoiding pain that comes with the trials of life has led her to the happiness surgery, the implant that numbs a person's response to pain, negative emotions, and floods dopamine into their brain, fulfilling the purpose of the Ambrosial Arbor that again has the sole purpose of providing immortality to eliminate the pains of death. The same tree that Shuhu and the Abundance followers prayed about. See the similarities here? Even down to the cult vibes, it's all the same. And speaking of all the same, Full Wish's goal in the trailer seems to be making the Phantom Moon games permanent and unending, which is suspiciously the same thing Ryusuke wished for. I still don't trust this guy, and neither does Himiko. But going back to Full Wish, this is a combination of abundance and elation that leads us to the Penacony crisis all over again. Once again, people are trying to use the paths to flee from pain and pursue pleasure. Sound familiar, Sunday? I bet it does, because as we hear in the trailer, Sunday will be redeeming himself by defending humanity's right to feel pain. So Sunday fans, rejoice, your day is finally here. But on the other side of things, we have Evanescia, who in her innocence sees the potential in the collaboration between the Elation and Abundance.
Actually, I think the Abundance and Elation make quite a good match. After all, only with infinite life can one pursue infinite joy.
But of course, not like this. There is also the possibility that Shuhu will be trying to use Evanescia as a vessel to revive himself, because Hoyo loves to make Yae get possessed. So I think Evanescia will be trying to help us out in her own way, along with Silverwolf, who I believe will be our main muscle for this patch. And though it has been shown that in the past she hasn't been able to control her level 999 cartridge power, the Mask of Elation will probably help with that, because it did with Ashvale's arm. The mask is said to have given him just enough control over his arm to use it against the LARP Rangers.
Simply removing the nail can cause it to stir and resonate with the fragment and fissure. Had I not kept it under control at that time, the fight would have ended with all of us buried in that bottomless abyss. Is that part of your plans too? pearl.
Wasn't the Mask of Elation I gave you enough to pin down the shadow?
So I think this will be the case for Silverwolf. So that explains what I think the major players will be up to in this story. But what about the backstage characters? Because I have a sneaking suspicion that we are forgetting about someone in all of this. A certain Lord Ravager teased to be our adversary in this story, Asat Pramad. Now, this guy is unlike any enemy we have ever faced before. He is not known to be a direct combatant, it's more that he uses his Antimatter Legion army to its utmost efficiency. Much like Selenova, what makes this guy so dangerous isn't what he directly does, but what he does indirectly. He is known as the chess master for a reason, and all of this infighting on the planet of Elation is the perfect cover for a plotting and scheming Lord Ravager to wreak havoc. Not that I believe that Full Wish is in league with Asat Pramad, I believe that she gives him the perfect opportunity to slowly and insidiously disassemble his victims. Unlike the erratic Lord Ravagers like Iron Tomb and Fantalia, this guy is known to be calm and composed, studying his opponents before methodically and slowly breaking them with his army. And since he is the enemy of Elation, everything he does is with precision and leaving nothing to chance. His head is a 20-sided die that always lands on the same side. That alone can even represent the extent to which he hates the concept of Elation's randomness. This guy is a weaponized morning actor hopped up on Nanook's golden blood, and he is making it our problem. And I believe this patch is where we will get our first crumbs. Because remember, 3.2 is also when we got a global passive, and where Lyga started looking suspicious and causing problems. And 3.3 was Proi. So, even looking at Hoyo's track record, this is the final calm before the storm. And even though the Shanjo has had many of them in the past, this is the Elation's first Abundance War explained. Things are heating up in Plain Arcadia, and we are moments away from learning more about the Abundance and Elation and the Trailblazer dying. Again, yeah, we kind of die almost every time we get new powers. The Harmony is the only time we didn't really die for it. But what is strange about this wound on our chest is that it looks like Nanook's. You know that scar, bleeding chest wound thing he's got in the front of his chest? I don't know what to do with that information, so that's why I'm telling you as the credits roll. Up until now, we haven't really seen what the Abundance is truly capable of, and I am hyped to see how dangerous this path is, and how Silverwolf will save the day. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.